Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and LFE. We are making this video to let you guys know of some changes that we're making at the beginning of this year. We're kind of getting rid of our subscription system and, going to kind of an honor system as far as that energetic exchange that we need to happen with the show. I mean, the show's been paying for itself for the last 7 years, and through the subscription system. But I want to get this material out to more people. Yeah. I want more people to have access to that second hour, and not feel obligated to subscribe for a monthly subscription or whatever. I think it's a necessary part of this evolution that we're going through that there's an energetic exchange of some kind.
Yeah.
And frankly, we need something to be able to keep the show going. I mean, it does cost some money. Yeah. I mean, it costs, several $1,000s to keep what we're doing going every year.
Yeah, not counting the time that we put in.
Yeah, not timing the time and effort and energy that we spend on a weekly basis bringing this stuff to you guys. So, there has to be some kind of energetic exchange. And we decided we're going to put it on this format because, number one, we want more people to have access to the second hour content. And, number two, I've got faith in my fellow man.
Yeah.
I know that our listeners out there are going to step up to the plate and cover our bases for us.
Yeah.
I mean, just take a look at our archives and all the different people that we've had through the last 7 years. I mean, we've had there's some amazing shows there. So if there's going to be a donate or a subscription tab that's with every one of these shows, and we expect everybody to do one of two things. They're either going to help us out financially, or they're going to pay it forward in some form or fashion. Yeah. And whether it's passing this stuff off to somebody else or doing some, helping a lady across the street, whatever it happens to be. So the tabs, the subscription format's still going to be available if you want to make like a monthly donation. If you want to make something that's recurring, that's awesome. That helps us out tremendously. Or if you want to just make a one-time donation, that's always available too.
Yeah. And it's up to you how much you want to donate. I mean, if you could afford $1, $1 helps. If
exactly,
if 1,000 people donate $1, I mean that'll get us a long ways. And not only in the show, but in the whole background of doing the show. With our computer work and the editing and the software and hardware we need. And the upgrades to the technology we need.
Right.
to help the show along. $1's not. Not too much, but I mean, even if it's not $1, just like Tom was saying, pay it forward. Give it to somebody else. Spread the information you learn, or share the shows on Facebook or something like that. Let's get this information out there, and especially with the second hour, like we really get into a lot of meat and potatoes with the second hour. I mean, the first hour is kind of our warm up hour, and the second hour is where we really get into it. So we really want that second hour to be out there for everybody to listen to and to absorb that information.
Yeah, we've got WordPress on the website, so what I think initially what we're going to do is we're going to stick up a comment section on the main page, a WordPress comment section, or at least a link to the WordPress comment section where people can go and drop their comments or suggestions or whatever. If you want somebody specific, us to get somebody specific on the show.
Yeah.
It's great for us to hear that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Any comments or suggestions,
Yeah. Or if you check the website and you see an upcoming guest that we're going to have, feel free to email us specific questions you have for that guest. And we'll try to work them into the first or second hour. Or if you have ideas for guests that we should have on the show, email us that too.
Good stuff. We're going to also be adding in the info tab underneath this second hour that you're about to listen to. There's also a link there, direct email to the info@the100thmonkeyradio.com if you want to just drop us an email. So, all right, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody for all the years of support that they've given us, and To our current subscribers, the choice is yours on whether or not you leave your subscription as is and continue the recurring stuff, or whether you drop that. I mean, this is, it's all up to you guys. So we thank you for your continued support, and man, on with the show, right?
Yeah, on with the show.
All right, namaste, my friend. Welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and the Monkey Crew. We have got Franco DeNicola with us, and on the other side of the seat, we have me, Tom, LFE, Greg, and Stephanie's here. And Stephanie, did you want to lead it out? You want to go on, jump into it?
Yes,
Both feet?
Yes,
here we go.
All right. So I was thinking about along the lines of being an empath, and so, like, say someone is an empath, whatever that means, and they don't even know it, and they go hug somebody, and for the next 2 days, they feel like, they're somebody else, or they have someone else's feelings, but they feel like they're theirs because they don't know the difference, right? Is that even a possibility? Does that happen? And if it does, and someone is an empath and doesn't know, and they're taking other people's feelings with them, how do they decipher the difference, and how do they get rid of them if they're unwanted, and then how do they use that as an asset? Oh, that was a lot. Sorry.
Damn.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot. Okay, there goes this hour.
Take it. Okay. I'm glad you brought that one up, because that's a good one, because that comes up. A lot of times people say, well, I pick up somebody else's energies, or like you said, you give somebody a hug and you pick up their energies. Well, I'll tell you one thing: you cannot pick up anybody's energy. I know that flies not well with people. What you actually end up doing as an empath, or is when you hook up with somebody, what happens is that you create such a profound connection with them that you trigger that particular state that they're in, you activate it within yourself. So in actual fact, what you're doing is you're just stimulating what you already have. If you do not have that particular state operational within you, you can hug anybody and you got no problems. You can walk into rooms, you can feel people's energies. You can feel where people are, but you're not affected by it. So, sometimes people say, well, I picked up somebody else's energy and I got to work on that. No, what you've done is you've been exposed to somebody's energy that triggered your response to it, your path of energy, because then you can work on that part of it yourself, because what you're doing is, oh, okay, I have this active in me. So if somebody is very sad and, and you're going, no, I'm all fantastic, and then you meet the sad person and you interact, you hug, you do whatever, and then you're sad, for you to experience that sadness, you would have to have already the sadness encoded within yourself that's still very vivid, and all it did is just trigger yours. That way, by not saying, well, I got to clear up somebody else's energy, and you look at yours, and then you can look at it and say, okay, why do I still have this in me? How does this benefit me? And what is it required for me to kind of put a closure to this or completion to this and move on beyond it? That way you don't end up carrying stuff for years and years and years, because you go right to where it lies, because it is something that is within you. So if it's not in you, that particular program or that response mechanism, you will not be able to trigger. You could feel it, but you will not take on that particular state of being, or that feeling of sadness, or whatever it may be that you pick up. So an empathic is a person that is very, picks things up, in a sense where it picks up other people's energy. And when I say pick it up, it's be able to tune into it or feel it. It's very open and can feel it. But then if they start carrying it, they're basically just activating their own. So I'm glad that you asked, because I want to clarify that, and I've mentioned it before with other, seminars and stuff I did, because sometimes people say, well, I'm afraid to go into certain rooms, or I'm afraid to connect with certain people because, I'm an empathic and I pick up all their stuff, right? Or if somebody's going through an emotion of some sort, and basically, so I don't want to be around people that are emotional because then I feel emotional. Well, it's just that they have that very vivid trigger that's so easy to just kind of launch it. So it's like a tuning fork, you know. If you have a tuning fork that can play the same frequency, when you strike one, it will activate the other.
Right.
And they both vibrate the same.
That makes sense.
So
or
Franco,
close to.
here's something I did here a couple of years ago. I went to the local fair here, the Western Washington State Fair, and I'm pretty sensitive, especially when I focus. Right, if I focus in on something, I can really, I'm pretty good at seeing the energy, seeing, feeling, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, when I walk into a room, if I have stuff open, it's like I can feel the whole room, right?
Yep.
So I was at the fair, and here I am walking in the middle of a crowd of thousands of people in the midway, and I actually decide I'm going to do an experiment. So I opened myself up, I just told myself, open up, feel all of them. Oh my God. I actually, 5 minutes later, I was out of the fairgrounds. I was so overwhelmed. It was shocking, and it affected me on a physical level. I mean, I didn't get nauseous, but I was definitely ready to get out of there. So when we're talking, I mean, in a sense, that's an empathic skill when you're able to sense others' feelings and energies. But the way that it actually had a physiological effect on me, whereas I felt bad. I had to get out. Would that be something? Would you see that situation even as having something within me, just like, you know, when an empath picking up, or what's being called picking up someone else's energy?
Well, what you did is when you opened yourself and you let a floodgate of different energies, emotions, and so forth come through, and then you kind of experience an overload there.
Right.
So there's still fragments of those things that are in your memories that you've experienced, or you know, maybe you haven't experienced it. So a lot of those got triggered at the same time. So first of all, you just kind of you opened yourself to feel it all. So you felt it all, and of course it was a major overload. But then when you had to walk out of there, because it started a chain of a reaction within yourself in your own emotional little triggers. And it may have been even small slivers, but because there were so many different ones.
Oh, I see that. I see it now.
Yeah, and then it started to actually change your physiology too, in a sense, because your vibration in the body started to alter, because now you're picking up all these emotions, all these different vibrational shifting within yourself, and that would have made you feel, you know, maybe nauseated, maybe, you know, dizzy, or the fact that you could have gone into a deep state of, you know, pulse, where you would start to kind of, how can you call it, epilepsy type of thing, who knows, but not to that extent, but, you know, something of that nature. And of course then you go get grounded or shake it off or something like that, and you'll notice that you subside after a while. But sometimes it takes a little longer, because you've triggered certain things within yourself, even though there weren't you know, huge things, but you know, because you got so much of it open at once. But I mean, that was an awesome experience. That was great.
It really was. Well, 30 minutes later, I was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to the car, and actually on the drive home, I was fine again. But it was like it was quite an experience, and yeah, not that I will do it again.
Well, you might want to do it individually rather than trying to take on a good chunk of the park, you know.
Yeah.
So Franco, do you think so the difference in being an empath and, you know, being open to feel somebody else's emotions, you know, and being drawn into them. So would you say as being like a true empath would be somebody that could sense other people's emotions but not have an emotional connection to it?
Well, that would be somebody that's more, I don't know if you would call it an empath.
In control of their...
Yeah, you'll be able to tune in and be able to feel what somebody else feels, so you get an understanding of how they're experiencing or feeling something. But you're not taking it on in a sense, it doesn't activate within you, because that is not, it's something that you've addressed or you've never really had as part of your experience. So you wouldn't, you would be able to feel it, but it wouldn't take you for the ride. For example, like if you got exposed to somebody that was really in a depressed state, for example, unless you have parts of the depression active within yourself, or the capacity to go down that route, you would be able to feel, wow, okay, that feels heavy. I can feel, the despair, feeling that, I'm stuck or whatever it is. And you could feel the energies within you, but at the same time, you wouldn't go fall right into it, or, start experiencing and then can't just step out of it. You'd just be able to receive it and feel it, but then you'd be able to walk away from it if you wanted to. Because the thing is, to assist someone, right, is to understand or to be able to feel or understand where they're at, and then create a shift within them. Mm-hmm. But not to join them, because then what you're doing is you're fueling. And this is what happens sometimes with empaths, because at times they walk in and they start to go sad. Now they're feeding each other.
Yeah.
Energetically, they're reflecting back and forth, and they become stronger and stronger, and they both go into a very emotional state or whatever they're going through.
Exactly.
Where one of them
long, slow spiral.
Yeah, exactly. And if one walks in and basically goes, oh, geez, okay, you're feeling all this, this, and this, and this, and okay, let's take a look at this. Or how about if we, did this or whatever it is. And so and then not only that, just to add a little bit more to it, because your vibration is not going to alter. Your vibration is going to be at a higher frequency, and it's going to be a supportive energy to pull them out of it. They're going to feel better around you.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many people, not only with myself, but other people walk in and say, listen, when I connect with you, just because I hear your voice, or just because you're close by, all of a sudden I feel lighter. You may have said very little of anything, because you may be able to sense where they're at, but you don't go into that state. You don't feel it. I mean, you don't, all of a sudden become the same vibration and the same state of consciousness. So you're basically able to lift them, because your vibration is higher. You end up shifting the person there.
Well, like you said, with your example, depression, right? We've all felt depressed at some point in time in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So now, for an individual to walk into a room where there's somebody who is depressed in that room, for them to be able to feel their depression but not become depressed, what does it take? How do we get to that state? And for me, like I think I've gained some sort of response over my emotions in that sense, but it's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we not fall into that other person's emotion?
Well, for you not to fall into it, you wouldn't have to have it active with you. Now, for you not to have it active, that means the story that originally created that belief that you need to feel depressed, because it is a state of mind, you may have already addressed it, or you've already cleared that part of it because you've experienced it and moved on beyond that.
Yeah.
So, for example, for somebody to feel depressed, they have to have a belief that, the world sucks, everything is bad, I'm not going to be able to get out of this. And then what they do is the focus is on a lot of negative scenarios, even though each scenario,
pessimistic.
Yeah, even though the scenarios may look at a mind level negative, there's no scenario that is ever negative. Every scenario is actually an opportunity for you to experience something, to create even something grander within yourself.
Yep.
But at that state of mind, it's like, oh, poor me, this is happening to me, and I can't do anything of that nature. But you have to have these stories to activate emotions, because an emotion is really just a memory, it's an energy that we create to accentuate your physical, to accentuate your state, for example. So if you're happy, you're going to trigger an emotion of happiness or elation or whatever you want to call it, which may, changes your physiology and you feel this pulse. But if you have fear, you notice that emotion comes in, or anger that comes in actually changes your physiology, and you feel it quite intense within yourself, right? So it's the same thing with that. So if you've addressed certain parts of emotion, because the emotion of, say, even depression, or to have depression, if you've addressed that part of you, it's no longer an active experience of yours, then you going around another person that's depressed, you're going to say, wow, yeah, I understand exactly where you are. I've gone through it, and this is what I've did. You know, I took steps this way, and I started to see the world this way, and all of a sudden that started to shift. So you're going to go in there with excitement when you feel somebody go, whoa, I'm familiar with that. But what happens is your story's been taken care of. You've already gone through that part of you that no longer is part of your experience. So you no longer activate that within yourself. So what you're doing is you're clearing the story, the program, and the belief system of what creates the state of depression, because you need a story to create a certain state. So you have to have a belief saying, well, you know, I don't mean anything to anyone. No one loves me. I'm a big mess. I destroy things. You know, nobody wants to be around me. You know, all types of. You have to have such belief. You create such a story around that, and that's how you go into a depressed state. Or you could keep, locking into yourself. I failed at here. I failed at my relationship. I failed at work. I failed at every part, and then you start bringing in memories of your childhood.
You live in the past.
Yeah, at school I did this with what friends, whatever, it brings up a whole bunch of stuff. But once you've actually experienced that emotion, you go through the whole thing, and then you start looking at the stories and you dissect the stories, you actually create a shift so those stories don't have any power anymore. You actually clear those stories out. Then, like I said, when you meet somebody that's going through it, you're going to be excited, actually. You're going to feel them, oh, okay, that's where you're at. Listen, I know where you're at. I've been there, my friend, and I know the stories we can create. I really know. I mean, I was really good at it. I saw this, and this. By just explaining your story, it starts to go, oh, wow, yeah, that's some of the things. So what did you do? And I said, well, this is how I shifted. I started to look at it and say, these are, basically my stories, and I've taken on, and I started to dissect each of the stories, how much of it is true and not true, and then that person just shifts.
Yeah.
So I have another question. Speaking of childhood, well, our 10-year-old daughter we just lost a pet, and her beloved chicken, and she asked me, why did that have to happen? Why did that have to happen? And all I can tell her is, it's all a part of the lessons in our life that we chose to learn. And she says, well, what are they? And I said, well, honestly, I can't really tell you, but I know that, nothing dies. Everything, exists, and she will always live in her heart. But the one big thing she said to me yesterday, as a matter of fact, she says, life doesn't seem real sometimes. It feels like a dream. And what is the real purpose in life? And honestly, I could give her, a few words, but what would you tell a 10-year-old that asks that?
Well, the thing is, too, okay, let's say the 10-year-old, your daughter, and if your daughter had asked me the question if it was my daughter, per se, and that question came up, because I've had those scenarios with my kids, too, when they were younger. Asking about, your beloved pet chicken, and say, we have to understand that life is in movement, that people, animals, situations, things come and go in our life, and we have to learn how to enjoy each moment of when it's there, but when it moves on, we have to allow it to flow. We have to let it go. And like you said there, the connection is always there. The chicken, the animal came in to do something, to experience, to help you experience something, but then it came to a time that it was not necessary for him or her to be with you anymore, and it's moved on. And for you to celebrate the fact that, okay, it was in my life, look at what I experienced, and now I let it go, and something new will come along, another experience, another playmate, another animal, who knows, and just to allow that. And then when the question came up of what's the purpose of life, we come on the planet here, we take on a body, we want to experience life, we want to learn how to play, how to experience life, to to learn how to navigate through the various experiences and to play with other people and to learn from other people and so forth. And we come and go through life, and this is why people come onto the planet and then they leave. It's because they'll come here, they'll learn whatever they need to learn, they experience what they need to experience, they help one another along the way, but then at some point the part of them that never dies, the infinite part, basically says, okay, I'm done on this playground, I'm going to go play in a different playground. And this is what you've done. You've had many lives here and on other planets and so forth. And at this point in time, this is where you are. And now is your opportunity to experience your journey here. And there's no limits to this journey. Each life you expand more, and each life you become even much more active in how you want to experience and play. And because you're bringing in more wisdom that you're gaining each time, you play very differently. You now have more capabilities to do so. This is a fun place, and you didn't come here by accident. You chose to come here. You knew what you had as an opportunity to play, but you also chose to not really remember all the details, because it's a lot more fun when you don't know all the answers, and to come and explore and learn while you're here.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That, Franco, I hope you don't mind, but I think I'm going to pick out that speech you just gave for talking to kids after a pet's died, or they asked that question. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to make a separate YouTube on that one.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful to a lot of people out there, I think.
Yeah. That was very helpful.
Good stuff.
Very helpful.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
The thing is, you want to empower the kids to understand really what's going on, because a lot of them do understand, but they get caught up in everything else. So when when you explain something of what I just explained, and I've explained something very similar to my kids when certain events were called, and they go, oh yeah, that makes sense, Dad, and it feels right, yeah, okay, and then they walk away and they're actually skipping away and happy with whatever it was, because they feel content, and that's it, because they've just kind of remembered a part they already knew, and it was just, oh, okay, great.
So that kind of encompassed the whole "why are we here" thing too, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I like that. It's good for any age.
Absolutely, And that's the thing, is because people, a lot of times they look at their lives and they go, all I'm doing is I went to school, I got jobs, I had some kids, I had lots of suffering. What's the meaning of life? I mean, that question came up a lot of times. What's the meaning of life? What the heck am I doing here, right?
Yeah.
Because at the mind level, just can't conceive there's got to be more to this than, waking up and going to work 9 to 5 and then, retiring at some point and then having all physical ailments so you can't actually enjoy life. And then, of course, the mind also only sees this lifetime. It doesn't see that, you're an infinite being that's immortal, and that, you never stop existing, and every experience that you have on this planet, because this is a big one that people come up and say, well, look, I'm learning all this stuff here, then I'm going to die. It's gone. I said, well, at the mind level, it may look that way, but, everything that you experience, everything that you're learning, you're just adding to your archive of information, so the next incarnation that you go, you're still carrying that wisdom, and you just keep adding to the wisdom. And even if you go on another planet or some other playground, you're bringing that wisdom with you. That wisdom is collected along the way, and then eventually it all merges with all levels of knowledge and experience gained by the quadrillions of aspects of ourselves that have come to play in all different dimensions and so forth.
So I want to go back to empathy for a second here. I got one more question on that, and what would you say is, or can you tell me what is the part of the empathic abilities that we can use to our own advantage the most as far as our own personal development?
Okay, one of the things that you can use for empathic is to be able to tune into certain experiences in people and be able to feel how they feel. And at that point, the empathic can actually see through their eyes, or see with their eyes, I guess, if you want to call it that, and be able to experience it without actually activating or going through a path of your own personal experience of the same thing. For example, so if you're tuning into somebody that has sadness, for example, you don't have to go through the whole process of creating sadness within yourself. So the person would be able to tune into somebody and feel what sadness feels like, and you can actually adopt that as, okay, that's how it feels to be sad, and you can go right into the intensity of it, because a conscious empathic person could feel every aspect of it and register it as part of your own experience if you wanted to. And that way you don't have to actually go through all the channels to create it. The other thing is you get a really deep understanding of humanity and what people go through, and in that regards, first of all, so you get a really good reference point of how different experiences are experienced through people. The next thing is empathic people can actually use it to trigger their own stuff, so that they could see, oh, okay, I got this still active within myself. So let me go through the process of experiencing it fully and then purge and clear it, let it go. So it is, when I say to people, if you got stuff triggering with you, great, go through the whole experience, feel the whole thing, and then you can make a shift in it, do a transition from it, where you're actually letting that part go. So, okay, I wrapped it up. I felt how that felt, and you bring it in. So there are 3 and many more other different things that you can benefit by being an empathic. So it's not a negative thing saying, well, I'm empathic, so, I'm a mess now. I have to be away or stay away from people and so forth. When you have an understanding, and this is what you want to do, is your trigger say, okay, I'm an empathic. Great. How am I going to use it? Am I going to use it to actually take on certain experience, to feel it, so I can learn from it without actually creating or recreating stories and so forth within myself, and utilize it as my reference point so that I can put into my records of experiences? Can I also learn how to feel what other people feel, so I have a good or better understanding, I have a better level of communication, I'll be able to assist people even more efficiently because I know how they feel, how deep it can go, and so forth. And the other thing is, can I use it to trigger my own stuff within myself and utilize it for me to actually create transitions and transformations within myself by letting go of my own stories, programs, and belief systems that get triggered. So those are 3 of the most popular ones.
What would you say is the most advanced state of empathy that you've come across or you've heard of?
You mean in the depth of it, or you're talking about the one?
I hate saying advanced or higher or lowest or any of those type. I hate to classify it like that, but for lack of a better way to describe it, what's the most advanced state of empathy that one can become?
Well, okay, I'll give you both sides of it. You can go as deep as empathy, where you can actually completely, you're around somebody that has cancer, for example, you can actually recreate all the symptoms of it within your own body. If somebody that empathic and can actually trigger, because they're so open to all of this, they can trigger various things and go right into the depth of experience. The other empathic person that would be the opposite of that, and I wouldn't say opposite, but more an advance in a different way, would be able to, when being exposed to different people, would be able to utilize whatever they're sensing from someone, feel how it feels, create a modification within themselves, and then utilize it to assist that person or to assist others, or on a large scale. So you will be able to really have much more detailed way of handling it, because you've actually had to process it through yourself. So you take a
psychometry of the spirit.
Yes. So those are the 2 sides of it. So you can go to the point of really feeling the depth of it and every aspect of it, and recreating certain, pretty intense symptoms within yourself, or to the other point where you can actually just process it through you to create a altered version to assist people through it.
Well, there's your Twilight Zone right there. No.
It's fascinating. It's amazing what we can do with every little experience. Once we realize and see how much we have at our disposal, you would not look at anything that we are experiencing as something, oh my God, look at what's happening to me, and I'm disadvantaged of this and that. With a certain level of awareness, you would be able to just see every opportunity, everything as an advantage of to play, to experience things, and to even expand yourself to such a degree that it's a mind-boggling what you can do, and it's just a little shift in consciousness. Every scenario and every experience. A lot of times people say, well, I want to get away from it. I don't want to experience all this negative stuff. And, negative or positive, everything is an experience. You gain something from every part of it. And then, of course, if you no longer require it, without judgment, you can let it go. You don't have to go down that path anymore. So it's pretty straightforward. But, at the mind and when you're going through an emotional ride, it may not seem all that simple.
Yeah. So do you see... Just from your perspective, do you see more people coming out, or more people now that are empathic or able to channel or be mediums than what you've seen in the past? Like, especially since the 2012 event, has there been more?
There has been, yes. Everything has been expanding exponentially. I've seen many more people, the numbers of people that are channeling now, and the amount of people that are connecting with the higher aspects of themselves or other aspects of themselves, the amount of people that are, really understanding each other or the human experience and be able to facilitate one way or another. Everything is increasing exponentially. That's for sure.
So since and all this stuff about Wave X and September, and that's come and gone now, I'm almost seeing it as that was whatever the date actually was for the the influx of the Wave X, or whatever you want to call it. I'm seeing that as a date to where you can take full advantage of that situation, and you can use that time frame to really become more in touch with yourself and go internal. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just thinking now, I'm sure that I know that we've seen many people took that day off work. There were so many people out when we had the eclipse, watching it all over where you could see it at. There were so many people that were actively engaged in it. So do you see that here in let's say the next year or two? Do you see that there's going to be an even more influx of this kind of internal knowings?
Yes.
Exponentially.
Yeah, exponentially. Yes, exactly. Of course, yes. And as we move forward, there will be more and more waves. Wave X is just a label that was given to it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had many different waves come in. Some waves actually upgrade the vibration of the planet and everything on the planet. Certain waves are to create stimulation within the humans and to actually update and upgrade the operating system and making shifts in their vibration and so forth. So that all of it is stimulating shift in consciousness, is stimulating a change within how we deal or play the human game, if you want to call it that. And of course, that's going to be reflective in also all the systems that have been created, that were originally created by different states of consciousness and different vibrations. So in essence, we'll start to realize, like even this wave X that came through, which is just a label, but this last wave that came in, it is to stimulate for us to be able to question things more easily. Yeah. For example, somebody of an illusionary authority, and I say that illusionary because it is all illusionary. Nobody has authority over anybody else. It's just, an agreement that, okay, you have more authority over me, but, or something of that nature. So so anyways, the illusionary authority turns around and says, oh, you got to go out and kill those 500,000 people in that country over there, get into your tanks and whatever else and go out and do it. With this last wave that comes in, it's like, okay, there's a higher level of questioning is, why are we doing this? Yep. What did they do to us? Or whatever. So there's a little bit more of a breakdown when it comes to just saying, yes, I'm going to go and do it without questioning. Now there's doubts coming into the mind. And the doubt is not really a doubt in of what is happening. It's more like, wait a minute, I don't know if this resonates with me. And maybe not those words will come out, but it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, this does not feel right. And all of a sudden your eyes start to open in a certain way and say, wait a minute, these are people just like us. What do they want, And so there's that. And the same thing in different institutions and corporations and whatever else. Instead of just being yes men and just saying yes to everything, and because you're afraid of losing your job, or because, somebody higher up in the food chain or whatever said, this is what you have to go do. While you're still doing your job, you're doing whatever it is, you start seeing between the veils and saying, why am I doing this? How does this make any sense? What's the purpose of this? And so forth. So that's what it was. Now, that's just the beginning. That was a pulse that came through, and it's going to continue to expand and increase right into the new year, where more waves will come in and so forth. So everything that we've been receiving, each pulse that comes in, each wave, like, for example, every time we have solar flares, or every time that we, sometimes there's a concern that, we're going to have another solar flare and it's going to hit us directly on the planet, okay? And it's going to wipe out our, satellites, it's going to wipe out, our electronics and whatever else, right? That's not the purpose. The solar flares, even if it's not directed directly on the planet and it's off to one side, it's still another pulse of gamma ray. It's another pulse of vibration coming to the planet. It affects us, okay? It may not disrupt things to a degree that will create more havoc, for example, on the planet, but it's going to be enough to give a pulse to kind of give you a shot in the arm type of thing energetically, and also to allow us to be able to see things a little differently. So there's so much taking place. Now, for example, our solar system is going through, I just lost the name of it, photon belt, okay?
Yeah.
So we're moving through that, and while we're crossing through that photon belt, there's a very different energy there, and it's a very the spectrum of light that's coming through there is actually creating change in the molecular structure of the planet, everything on the planet, and the humans too. And it's kind of rewiring it gently along the way so that the patterns that we've established will not be able to run the same way, and it's going to create more changes and a stimulation of our DNAs and stimulation in our genetic codes and so forth. So all of it is all purposeful and benefiting, the direction that we want to go, and that is to create a complete shift in the way that we experience. So what we're doing is we're going through a transformation of the human experience and the planet, because the planet is a reflection of our consciousness, and it is a playground that supports where we're at, right? So all of this is taking place. So there's a lot more waves coming in. For example, we just recently, the middle of the month, I'm trying to remember the dates now. My mind sometimes, I have too many things float. But the middle of the month of September, we had just recently had a third activation for fifth dimensional consciousness for the planet. So it was a pulse of energy with an activation code for launching for the planet to go into fifth dimensional consciousness. There's another one on the 21st, so it was actually the 21st of September was the third one. Before that, it was the 21st of June, and the one before that was 21st of March. So now there's the one coming up on the 21st of December, which will be the last encodement for fifth dimensional consciousness, and then there's an integration process that goes into about March of next year. So these are pulses, these are scheduled to take place. However, how it responds to where we're at, we're not there yet because we're moving along the way, plus all these other waves that are coming through. So there's a lot of activity occurring, and this is why we feel the different energies coming through us. This is why we feel, our patterns of thought change. We see the world is reflecting one way or another. Our viewpoint starts to change, how we see things, like was being said there just recently with Stephanie, that, sometimes the world doesn't even look real. It starts to change, because what doesn't look real is the world that we were used to before, and it's like you start to be getting a glimpse of a mismatch and say, okay, this is not my world anymore, because I'm stepping out of it. My frequency is changing, my state of consciousness is changing, and I'm starting to see things differently. So things that used to be real, used to be very concrete in a way, start to become less and less, and you start to see it as, it's just an illusion type of thing, because the next level of creation is something that we're bridging into, that we're still working on doing.
So is this across the full spectrum of consciousness here? I mean, what about the people who are completely oblivious to energy and waves and, of anything outside of the, third dimensional Western mindset?
No matter who you are, what state you're in, you're affected, one way or another. The degree that you're affected, the degree that you acknowledge or are able to realize it or be able to connect with it, will depend on where you're at. So everybody's being affected one way or another. It's just that the ones that are a bit more receptive, or they're much more tuned, for example, they will feel it much more impactful, and it will stimulate them to go through things a little more intensely. Even the ones that are, sometimes people say asleep, or, just sleepwalkers, if you want to call it that are not attuned at all. They do feel something. They see things changing within themselves. They may not be able to recognize it or define it or be able to categorize it with anything, but they can't deny it. You can't ask anybody around, if you ever meet them and you start into a deep conversation of any sort, and say, do you feel any changes going on onto the planet at all? Do you see anything change in the last year or two? And then at first they say, well, no, things are still crazy, but, even when you look at the craziness, does something feel different to you? And everybody admits something because they notice it. Or, I feel things gotten a little more chaotic, or I feel that, things seem a lot more crazy with people, and certain people I was talking to before I can't seem to talk to anymore, or, I'm losing friends, or I'm losing this, there's a lot of transition going on, or things don't make sense to them, or sometimes they go into more an emotional state. So everybody feels something to a certain degree.
So what we need now is for that right person in the right place within the third dimensional hierarchy to have their own personal spiritual awakening.
Well, even let's take the hierarchy. Let's take the elites of elites, the ones that are, running our planet and so forth. And they're being affected too. Now, they may be resisting it to some degree, and even though their operating system and their physicality and mind is a lot of it has been programmed not to be observant of it and to stay on track and focused on their agenda, they're still being affected, because in essence they can't stay in the state that they were in. So in essence there's a higher realization. So some basically get to a point where they say, I don't want any part of this, and they commit suicide, or they step out, or whatever. Others are starting to have static, if you want to call it, in their mind. The thought patterns are not consistent. They're starting to have waves of fluctuations that are occurring. So they're being affected too. They may still hold the ground, and some of the playmates below the scene are still holding on, but they're losing their ground, if you want to call it. Their state of operation is floundering, if you want to call it that. And you can see it, because sometimes you'll notice it. A lot of times, because they're not in front of the media, you don't see them. They'll start talking even more crazy. They start acting more crazy than they are, because in essence they start to feel more crazy. They start to feel, something's going on. I can't seem to have the same, stay on the same track as I was before. So eventually it comes to a point where, it starts to collapse much more intensely and much more prevalently along the path. But right now there's still seems that they're still holding out some form of control. But in essence, that's going to be I can call it, falling apart as we move along over the next few years. And we're not talking a long time. You'll notice a lot more crazy things will start to happen, where the things you least imagined would happen in alignment would all of a sudden come into play.
Well, you talk about crazy things. I mean, I don't watch TV. I mean, I watch, I have Netflix, so I watch, series. Zero commercials, no regular broadcast stuff. But every time it does, I walk through a room, or I hear something on the radio, or whatever. I do see something or other. It just seemed like they're doing such a shitty job of faking it.
Yeah.
It's become so blatantly obvious. Some of these things that they're staged, these news stories that they're covering, it's just like, you got to be kidding me, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's interesting, because sometimes you're in a public place or something, and they have the TV blaring there. It seems like on the news channels and so forth, and then the commercials come in. And the last little while when my dad was sick and I had to keep going to the hospital, well, wherever the waiting room was, these darn TVs were on all the time. They were mounted on the wall. You couldn't even turn it off. And you start noticing commercials, and you start noticing when they're coming in and broadcasting news, and it's like, really? It's almost like an insult to your looking at it. And it's like, you're kidding me. People are that gullible. I mean, it's like in your face, and it's just so fake. So I don't know how to put the words, and because you see beyond that, and more and more of that is becoming more and more with people, and there are more and more people that are getting away from watching the news and taking information from the media, or even shifting from watching regular television. And this is one of the reasons there's a lot of, more push to go into the internet, or to go through, like you said, Netflix and stuff like that, because you don't want to be exposed to all the propaganda, if you want to call it that, from, either commercials or news broadcasts or bulletins or whatever else that they may have.
So are we getting better at recognizing it, though, or are they getting just sloppier with what they're putting out?
Well,
the quality of the stories they're so ridiculous that it seemed like they used to have a little bit better quality to the story, more believability, at least back in the day.
It's a combination of both, because we are able to see it more now, and of course they've gotten sloppier. Yes, absolutely. In essence, it's when you look at it, even the false flags that they're doing.
Yeah.
The amount of loose ends they leave, and it's so unbelievable. It's almost like, listen, we're going to do such a lousy job, I want you to see it, so that you can actually finally realize we're pulling the wool over your eyes, but this time the wool's not that thick, and we have tears in it. We want you to see it. We want you to see the wizard behind the curtain type of thing, because the curtain is so thin and is full of holes. I want you to see it, and we're going to do it on purpose for you. And then, of course, we're becoming much more aware and observant, and that's it. The thing is, a lot of the stuff, more and more people are not believing what they hear and what they're seeing anymore, and more people are just saying, are you kidding me? I don't know how I used to follow it before. Now I can't even follow it. So
I was an avid news watcher for years, and as soon as I started expanding my mind, little by little I quit watching the news, and every once in a while I'll turn it on, and it's just unbelievable. But like you were saying, it's almost like they want you to see how false it is. I mean, with this shooting that happened a couple months ago in Virginia,
body cam.
Yeah,
shooter.
the live TV shooter, right? I mean, these videos are just so fake. I mean, anybody within 5 minutes can realize that this mainstream news source just put out a false story, and sold it as truth. So I mean, it just really makes me wonder if there is people that are waking up in these positions of power, but they don't have the ability to come outright and say what's going on. So, if you want us to fabricate this story, then we're just going to do it so horrible that an idiot should be able to see it.
What should scare us is all those who don't.
Mm.
Well, and speaking of fear, I was just wondering about this. So, because there's still a lot of people that live in fear, and they call them, reasonable fears or unreasonable fears. It doesn't matter. But and they want to get out of it. They don't want to live in that state. What is a simple process to help them get out of it, so that they can take their own actions, whether it's mantras or meditation or just something really simple they can give themselves to get out of that rut of fear?
Well, to create fear, we have a lot of different stories within ourselves. So, what I say to people, if you experience fear, go into the fear. Meaning, create the most scariest scenario you can possibly create with your mind. Go through the worst scenario, the worst way that you can experience. Go through feeling the most deepest level of fear that you can possibly can. And by doing so, and by holding it on as long as possible, you actually hit a point that actually dissolves, starts to break down the pattern of fear and all the illusionary power that's been given to the fear. Because in essence, I don't know if you've ever experienced it yourselves. I'm sure all of you to some degree may have experienced it, where you've had certain fears. And when you go into the fear of it, or, be exposed to that level of fear, if you allow yourself to totally feel it, totally get immersed in it, right, it shifts. And the level that you require to get scared has to be even higher. But if you allow yourself to go to maximum, what you do is you break the whole pattern. It dissolves, right? So in times is, when somebody's having a fear of what's going to happen, say, I'm afraid that my partner's going to leave me, or that, I'm going to die. You walk them through the whole process of seeing themselves die. And if you have to actually act certain parts and say, okay, see yourself now, certain parts of your limbs have to be cut off, whatever, and they feel it. They start to laugh after a while, because after you got to a certain point, they first will have their emotional thing, and then they're saying, it's getting weaker, and I can't feel in it, I can't even project it anymore. Because what you've done is actually, you've actually looked at the boogeyman underneath the bed that you were so afraid of. Because as long as you're on top of the bed and you know that thing, you believe that it's under the bed, you can create this monster over and over again and make it as big and dark as possible you want, that it's going to do something. But the moment you go underneath and start looking at it and see for what it looks like, which is most likely just an illusion because it's not there, then it's like the whole thing disappeared. Yeah. It's changed completely. So that's the scenario. And somebody goes, well, what happens if it starts a war? Great, we're involved in a war. What happens? We get killed? Okay, we leave this physicality, we step into another physicality. Okay, that's experience that part of it. Or, something else is going to come through, or whatever it may be. Everything is whatever we want to experience, and that's it. So that's the first part. Then the other part, you can look at the stories that we've added, fed, for what the fear is. Because a lot of times we have this illusion of fear that we've taken in as a child, saying, if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. If you can go back and relive it in your own mind and just see yourself experiencing the opposite. So say your parents said, don't you ever, go do this, this, and this, and this, and whatever that may be, and then just vision yourself doing it and experiencing whatever, and you allow yourself to feel it, you'll notice it dissolves. The whole pattern changes within you. So you don't have to have fear anymore at that point. But then also the other thing that helps is when you start becoming more conscious, you start realizing, wait a minute, I only create what I want to create. And if I need to create something that's going to be intense, I'm going to create it, I'm going to experience it, but then I know I can uncreate it, and I can step into something totally different right away. So that realization, if you have a fear of flying, you're going to go on the airplane and you're going to go, okay, well, if I need to go, I'm going to go. And if the plane crashes, I'm going to have the experience while I'm going down and my stomach is up into my brain because of the speed that we're collapsing. And it's going to be a real vivid roller coaster, but I'm not on any tracks. I'm just on the floor. And when I hit the bottom, it's going to be a pretty interesting experience. I'm accentuating this, but in essence, you get to that point and say, okay, great. If that's what I need to experience, I'm fine with it. If I don't, I don't. I won't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I see myself screaming in a plane on the way down.
Well,
I don't think
most likely you won't, because when you're in a state, in a much more expanded state of consciousness, you're just going to be with the sensorial experience of feeling what you're feeling. But you're not going to be, oh my God, or whatever it is. We're going to crash, It's like, all right, we're going to crash. Let's see what's going to happen.
But Hollywood says, Hollywood says if your plane's going down, everybody panics and yells and screams and throws shit in the air.
No, I'm going to suck on that oxygen mask.
You know something? That's preconditioning programming of how people should respond and react, because that's what the movie world does. That's what the media does. That's what education does. You get trained how to respond and what to judge as good or bad and how to react to anything. So, because without those conditioning, most of the time you do not respond the way that it's projected. Because if you're not exposed to all this conditioning and programming, your viewpoint of the world will be very, very different. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
But, you adopt whatever you adopt, you experience whatever you experience and so forth. But I can tell you, if a plane's crashing, people are not going to be throwing stuff around. They're going to be holding on to their seats or whatever they're going to feel. And some will scream because they're programmed to scream, because that's how they react. But, it's without the conditioning, even with the conditioning, it's not going to be how it's dramatized in the movie world, because that is fictional. I mean, everything is fictional, but it's a further separation of fiction.
There's been a lot of talk about all the different media that the shadow side, whatever we want to call them, the dark ones, the controllers, that they've employed to control the mind.
Yeah.
Outside of the media. They've got all these talk about HARP and all sorts of frequencies that are supposedly being projected and stuff like that. What do you know along those lines as far as technological deviousness that's out there?
Well, okay. When we're talking about, there's a lot of stimulation and influences that are being utilized when it comes to the control structures and what roles they're doing, what they're doing. For example, like you're saying the chemtrails, for example. They've been spreading out all different types of toxins and different aluminum oxide and so forth, which we are breathing in, we are taking it into our body and so forth. So it actually becomes a recipient to frequencies. And then, of course, you get HARP, and it starts to bounce frequencies off the stratosphere, and it starts to beam down. And of course, it starts to create different states, because the recipient of those aluminum oxides and other chemicals in your body starts to react to it. But again, all of that, and also the fluoride in the water, the different chemicals that we've taken on, because pharmaceutical, you name it, whatever it is, there's so many additives and so forth. They will react with the moon's, because the moon is used as a large satellite too. You're talking about the satellites themselves, and then you have HARP, and then you have repeaters, and then you have different waves coming in from different, used through cellular, whatever. All of it stimulates us to stay in a very feared, controlled, paranoia state in a way, if you want to call it that, and also in a sleep state, because then you can be easily manipulated or easily programmed. To a certain degree, that has some effect, but what's happening is becoming less and less effective, because the frequency of the planet, the frequency of our operating system of our body is changing, so it's getting out of the range that they have effectiveness, and that's why they've been going even more ballistic and doing even more, trying to compensate for the lack of response it gets from the original original efforts that they have taken to make it work. So yes, is there something of that nature taking place? Yes, it is. You can't deny it. there's so many, whistleblowers, and there's so many people from the insider that are saying one thing or another. There's a lot of discoveries. There's a lot of people that have stepped aside, scientists and otherwise, and started analyzing and looking at the effects, and they started looking at, why is the body being affected at certain times, and then they started looking at the trend and saying, oh, okay, there's an alignment here going on, and there's HARP was used at this particular time. Oh, this is how it's affecting the water currents. It's affecting the temperature of the waters, or the storms that are being moved around.
Evidence is mounting.
Yes, exactly. And people are not as gullible as before and just kind of sitting back and, oh, well, that's all it is. It's whatever's happening. More and more inquiry is going on. And look at how many people are doing tons of research now looking into things, right? So, and they're sharing it. Sharing it publicly. Now, I can't say the internet is a huge tool, but it's also being manipulated too, because not all the information is true, because you also have people that are being employed to write, debunked, what do you call it, false stories, and,
right.
Contradict, for example, somebody has a discovery that is the truth, for example, and then you'll hear a couple other stories coming out and either defaming them or basically contradicting them or coming up with other. But what happens is as you become more aware and you notice it, because a lot of times you'll hear stories that contradict some other story, and you're looking at it going, yeah, right, okay, because you can tell that it is, even though it creates a false substantiate the claim with some false claims or false information, like the FDA does and all that stuff, where they have side effects, or they may have negative whatever responses to certain chemicals, or they don't work, or anything like that.
But board is an ex-Monsanto CEO.
Yes. Exactly, but they'll cover it up, or they will change the facts or anything of that nature because they want you to know whatever they want to know. It's the same thing, so they'll propagate some other information that contradicts the truth or whatever it is. So it puts doubts in people's minds. But anyone that's kind of awakening and starting to realize it, they can sense what's true and what's not true, and it's like, nah, this is made up. This is so forth. Because I see that sometimes myself. Sometimes I'm on Facebook and I'm scanning through things just once in a while to keep abreast of things, and a lot of people post a lot of stories and or different information, and you're looking at it and you're scanning through it. Oh, okay, this is an implanted information that's false, whatever it is, because you can sense it, and even how it's worded, you can tell. It's the same thing, it's loosely put. Even the information is false. Sometimes it's actually you're looking at it and you go, oh my God, how much effort do you have to put into to come up with this, or you believe it, right? It just goes on and on.
Yeah, that's some low vibration energy there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely see a significant amount of that on Facebook. Selfies, oh my God! Give me a break, people. Okay.
Well, you even see the stuff that's posted at times. It's just as bad as the media,
Right.
because some of the most craziest things get on there. I mean, and you say, well, who the heck is interested in this,
Right. So, is there anything happening on the planet now or coming up real soon that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, I mean, we're in the midst of another wave of energy that we're going through, and this is going to continue into the end of the year. And it's going to push us even harder and harder to kind of break out of our patterns. So if you're going to start feeling a lot of intense stuff coming up, or you start to feel even crazier, if you want to call it that, or in other cases you might feel much more relief too, because in essence it starts things start to feel much more aligned within yourself. I mean, this is everything that's happening right now is to facilitate us. Of course, there's a lot of potentiality that some of the things like the market, the stock market, certain things may even become more erratic, more unpredictable, becoming more, and then going into the tail end of the year, into the new year, there's a lot of things. Because of the different waves of energy coming in and what people are going to be feeling, where they're going to question a little more, you're going to see much more stuff coming to the surface, but also some more changes or people taking action to create change. The financial stuff is really bumpy, and it's hard to say where it's going to end at this point. At some point, it is going to, completely go through a reform. But is it going to be, messy? From what I see, there's a lot of probabilities of it, having certain events come through where there's going to be some panic and stuff like that. But as a certainty, I can't say certain in anything. But as for pulses of waves coming in, like I said, the last quarter of the 21st of December, we have the last wave of fourth dimensional consciousness. So people that are very 3D, very holding on to very old aspects of themselves, where they're caught up in the material world, caught up in definitions about themselves or their stories and beliefs or whatever it is, are going to find it harder and harder to function unless they let those parts go and basically allow a new aspect of the self to emerge. So that's that, and then we have some really good stuff coming into the new year. So these are all, again, they're all just new waves coming in. Some affects the planet, some affects personally. To be okay, you have to really, what I say to people is just to flow with things, because you're going to see some pretty erratic things going on, some craziness in a way that can project out of this, but as people start to break out of patterns and start breaking out and saying, okay, we're not going to play this game anymore, and start taking different action and so forth. There might be some disruption in some of our systems. Those are all potential. To the degree it's going to happen, it's hard to say, because in essence it depends on where the state of consciousness is by that time. So, people say, well, we're going to have food disruption. Yeah, already we're starting to. Right. But, it may go even deeper along the way. Some of the crops, because of certain weather patterns and so forth, have been affected, and there's certain, the water supply in California is affecting it. There's other things happening, intensities in other parts of the world where we get food supplies and so forth. There's various things that can, and also the financial thing. It's, at some point it's going to go through a radical change. So is there going to be a disruption for a period of time? Very probable for that to occur. So the thing is, there's no prediction at this point, but those are all high-level probabilities that can take place. How people respond, either they bring them a little closer, or they go more separate for a while and then bring them closer. But in essence, the purpose is to, have people work together as a team and to collaborate and to create a different environment. So there's a lot. As we go, we have, let's put it this way, from now to the beginning of 2018, we have many, many different waves coming through, many changes in the way things operate, and there's going to be various things that will unfold to reflect that. So,
yeah, I've always felt that this time frame that we're really getting into right now, the 2016, 17, 18, we're going to be really dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's here now. Mm-hmm. It's starting, and that's what I'm kind of sensing now.
It is, yes, exactly. And it's an exciting time, as much as it may seem chaotic and so forth, it's an exciting time because many of us, including you guys, feel it's like, okay, it's time. It's, it feels right that this all is taking place right now. And it's becoming much more exciting, too, because before, it's really hard for any of you right now and many of the listeners and so forth to basically say, I'd really like to keep everything the way it was and just kind of stay on that path. People are beyond that. Everybody's questioning everything. It's like, why are we doing this? Why do we need to still live this way? And they wouldn't want to. Everybody's looking for change at one way or another, even though we have a contradictory consciousness or energy coming through where we have to be afraid of change. We're being programmed to be afraid of change.
Right.
But at the same time, the deep part of us is saying, no, we want change. We're done with this experience. Let's upgrade whatever we need to upgrade and let's move on. Yeah. So there's that part of you. pushing harder and harder, and the other part that is so fearful of change is getting weaker and weaker.
Right. The people that are everybody's getting sick and tired of the system.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, that's across the board. You know, even the people that are deeply embedded within it are sick and tired of the system.
Exactly. Exactly. And you look at the young people. Many of them, they're distracting themselves with the electronics. They're being, manipulated in a way, if you want to call it that. I don't like that word, but being programmed through, the different games and the different forms of, media and electronic distractions and so forth. But, the only reason that they're so embedded in that because they don't relate with this reality any longer or this way of life. Many of the students that I've talked to or kids that I've talked to, they say as much as everybody tells us we have to do what our parents did or that we have to, go and have these conventional jobs, they don't want those conventional jobs. They want no part of it. And then they say, well, I don't know where I stand and I don't know what I really want to do because nothing feels right.
Right.
Yep.
And then, of course, then they go and, go all over the place and try to get stimulation through, chatting and playing video games and, doing the tweeting and whatever else, electronics, whatever, just to keep, create a different reality and get lost in certain reality because this reality is so boring, so stagnant and so stuck. And then, of course, a lot of them, if you look at it, most of them don't even watch the news. It's just the ones that have been more conditioned along the way. You ask how many kids actually sit down and watch the news. They want no part of it. They can't stand it because they're what you were saying earlier. They look at it and say, what is this? There are a bunch of bubbleheads there speaking, or, whatever they're sharing. It seems so stupid. Now, unless you've been bred through where you've been sitting there since a little child, then you get hypnotized by the television and sometimes you'll watch it. But most of them are going to video games, they're going into other things because they can't relate with it.
Right. It's definitely old school now. It's beginning to become old school anyways.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, well, Franco, man, you guys ain't got anything else we want to throw in here before we let Franco go?
Everything got answered. Wow, it was a great show.
Yeah, good stuff, Franco. Man, thank you so much for what you do.
Well, you're very welcome. We're all doing our part, and we're all assisting each other through this. So this is an amazing time, and one thing I could say to you guys, which I have a high appreciation for, I've known what I know, and I've been doing what I've been doing for a very long time. And, but, it was always a lonely path, because I saw things a certain way. I had a certain level of understanding, and no one else reflected that at all. There was no one that you could actually have a sit-down conversation. It only in the last 10, 15 years that, this thing started opening up bit by bit by bit. But now, the amount of people that are on board and many people are interested and actually understand and resonate with it and actually taking action with it is phenomenal in comparison. To have this conversation that we had today, okay, and the ones we've had before and others that we may have, these conversations couldn't be had, even a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, because in essence, any time of that nature, people weren't even ready for it. Now, look at all the new questions you have. Look at all the interest there is. Look at the understanding that you have from this conversation. It's very different. And we didn't even go that far out because we can go even further. But,
Right.
But, to have that. So to me, I do have an appreciation that people like yourself that are doing what you're doing and have that level of understanding and also the capability to share it. It's a privilege to be able to do that. It's like, great, finally I get to open up a little bit more and I can actually talk to some people that actually understand.
Yeah, it's a nice thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. All right, well, man. Okay, before I get all mushy here, let's say goodnight to everybody. Thank you so much again, Franco. FrancoDeNicola.com, guys. I would urge you to go over there if you haven't already been there. If you've listened to this whole thing and haven't made it over to his website, I don't know what's wrong with you. Anyways, we love you guys, and we will see you guys next week. We got our review, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do a review.
Yeah, again.
Yeah, that didn't work out last time.
Yeah.
We'll explain that in the next show. Anyways, love you guys. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
How do you wash your sweet potato?
Namaste, my friends.
Thank you guys. Bye.